Are you a real estate investor looking to sharpen your skills or a newbie looking to become one? You're in the right place. Welcome to Where Should I Invest? Real Estate Investing in Canada with your host, Sarah Larbi.
Hey, and welcome back to another awesome week. So today we switched things up a little bit and I am on the hot seat. I'm the one being interviewed, and I had a guest that was a podcast listener reach out, Michelle Spencer, and asked me some questions about the cottage rental and all that good stuff. And I said, you know what, why don't we do something different and you interview me and I will share what I know about the short-term rental industry, cottage rentals. And you know what is really cool, and I want to congratulate you, Michelle. Michelle went out and bought an awesome cottage after the podcast and has done really well on it, and that is awesome. But I want to thank Michelle for stepping out of her comfort zone and being the interviewer and asking so many awesome questions, really preparing and taking action, which is also really cool to see. And I'll tell you, this cottage rental industry these days have absolutely gone insane. I literally put an offer in on one like last week. By the time you guys hear this, it might be a couple weeks later. And there were like 10 offers and it went $275,000 over asking. And we did go over asking as well because it was price low for a bidding war and they were holding offers. But this market is insane. At some point, I don't think it's gonna last forever, but I'll tell you, the cottage rental market, even this summer and even to the fall, has been on fire and doing awesome. And I'll tell you, for some reason, I can probably figure out why people want to get away and be more in nature and be on the water and get away from the city more and more. So it's getting harder to find cottage rentals. It's not impossible, but we talk about all of that and what to do to get great renters, but also the best types of cottages that I prefer. So anything cottage industry wise that you guys have questions about, again, it's not like I have thousands of them either. I'm happy to help answer questions. But I will tell you, it is my favorite investment by far. I've done awesome with it, and I definitely want more. They're just harder and harder to get because now we're competing against a lot of non-investors and people that are looking for their forever type of cottage. So I can't compete with that. I can't pay $275,000 over asking either. But there are some great opportunities that will come. And some of them might be here, and they might just not be exactly where I'm personally looking. But I hope you guys enjoy this podcast, and I will tell you there's 2 more days, September 13th, to join the BRRRR'd course that I'm going to be doing. That's going to last about 2.5 months. If you guys are interested in learning how to BRRRR properties and build wealth and retire early, feel free to join, and that information is on my website, sarahlarbi.com. Go to the BRRRR section and you can read all about it. Reach out to me if you have any questions. But if you plan on joining, September 13th is our first official call day, so be there prior. And hopefully you guys enjoy this podcast. And thank you, Michelle, also for being the interviewer and me the interviewee and asking so many great questions. So let's do it. Michelle, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks. How are you?
Good. So we're switching it up today, and I'm going to be interviewed by you. And I'm super excited. You reached out to me a little while ago by email, and you had some great questions. I'm like, you know what? Why don't you host this episode of the podcast, and we can have that conversation? So welcome.
Thank you. It'll be interesting because I've never been on a podcast as an interviewer or an interviewee. So we'll see how it goes.
Absolutely. Hey, it's always good to try something, and I think it's going to be really exciting. So feel free to ask whatever questions you would like, and we're going to focus a little bit on your questions about the cottage and the Airbnb rentals. And happy to share what I can with you, and hopefully it helps some other listeners as well.
Okay, sounds good.
All right, let's do it.
Okay, so basically, I have 8 investment properties, and I'm starting to look, towards retirement and, what that's going to look like. And so we're looking to buy a cottage. So I know you have mentioned that you own a cottage, which you also rent out. So that's why I reached out to you to get some, more information on what's the best way to go about that. So when I asked my favorite investor-focused real estate agent to help me with the cottage purchase, she said that there are actually a lot of different clauses and things to know about a lake or cottage purchase that she doesn't have experience with. So she suggested I reach out to somebody, kind of in the area that I want to buy. So I was wondering, how did you find your realtor to buy the cottage, and were they investor focused? And what are some of the things that they thought you should be aware of, when buying a cottage or lake property?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think with this one, we started looking for a cottage and we weren't really sure. These are great questions. We weren't really sure where we wanted to go. What we did not want is to drive north on the 400 highway, because just, where something could take 2 hours, it would take 4 to 5 hours just based on the summer traffic and everybody wanting to go north. So we really wanted to focus on being able to take the 407, which is a toll highway with no traffic, and have a commute that was 2 hours max. And so we started looking in the Kawarthas. I live in Oakville, so Kawarthas is about 2 hours and has that 407 opportunity. And, probably looking back at it, I could have definitely asked some other investors that have cottages in different areas who they've worked with, but we ended up actually just calling some of the agents that were listing some of the properties that we liked, just as we were like dabbling in it. We weren't too sure where we wanted to go. We ended up coming across one realtor who was listing a cottage, and started asking her some questions about it. And she used to be an investor, had gone to Costa Rica, and then, at that point sold her investments, came back as a realtor. So had some experience as an investor prior, didn't have any current properties, but knew the cottage rental market quite well. And I think that was important. And what we really liked about her is the property that she was listing. She's like, no, don't buy it, because it was a weedy lake. And we wanted this as a cottage property that we can swim in the water. And I actually really liked that honesty. So we started looking with her, and that's actually how we found her.
Cool. Yeah, that's one of the hard things about looking in the winter. We've been just, kind of seeing what's out there, and you can't tell how many weeds are at the beach when they have like snowy pictures.
I know, because it's like there are some lakes, like just one lake to the other can be night and day. And then there's also like some lakes in the Kawarthas that have some issues with the natives and rice planting and just a lot of politics. So Google that stuff in those lakes beforehand, because one of the properties that we ended up liking originally, it was a property, and we're like, what is all this green stuff like that we can kind of see above the snow and the ice? And so we started researching, and it was like rice that was being planted for food.
Oh, wow.
And it was like just a long battle between the cottage owners and the natives. And I'm like, you know what? There's nothing wrong with them. They can obviously do what they want, but I prefer not to have a cottage in a place that is going through all those political back and forth issues.
For sure. I think some of those cottages too, don't you lease the land from the natives?
Yeah, so I wouldn't do anything with leased land.
Yeah,
I would have to own the land. It's also a lot harder to get financing, so you got to look at that part. So when we started looking at cottages, we actually worked with my mortgage broker, and she really advised that we find a 4-season, because then it could count as a secondary home. We could actually just put 20% down, do a 30-year amortization. And as soon as you get into like 3 seasons, leased land, like it just becomes a lot more complicated when it comes to financing.
Right. So 5% down isn't an option for a second home like a cottage? No.
So, I mean, unless it becomes your primary home and you're like going to live in it or something along those lines, right?
Right.
Secondary home or an investment property, 20% down. As soon as you get into like 3 season, you're probably looking at like 35% down, and maybe, a shorter amortization, which will make your payments higher. And then leased land, I mean, to me, I just avoid it altogether. Like it's not worth it, in my opinion, for the fact that you can never, like the resale is always going to be that stigma as well. And then there's a lot of things that you cannot do, like Airbnb rentals or short-term rentals, when you don't own the property and it's on leased.
Right. So are there any other things to be aware of when buying a cottage or lake property, like, with the well water or anything like that?
Yeah, so I think it's just really, really important to get an idea of like, what is it that you want to do with it, right? Is it just going to be for you? Or are you planning on renting it out on Airbnb? And if so, what's the market like in that area? Like, what can you get? So it's just good to look at that stuff. For us, it was important to have an area where there's like a town nearby, so it's not very isolated, right? So we wanted to have that. So we really narrowed it down to like a few places, and we picked Lakefield. So there's a small population there. Most of the people actually live there. Well, not most, but I would say half of them on the lake live there as their primary home year round, which I thought was pretty cool. But it was more, so the well water is not a big deal. Like for us, we just need to make sure that it was heated so that it can be a 4-season, because there's a few things, right? Like insulation, heating, the water, like all that stuff that can make it a 3 or 4 season. Now, the other thing is, even if you buy something 3 season, you could have a certain time frame that you can turn it into a 4 season to get proper financing. So that could be something that you can figure out if that makes sense. But I just wanted something that was nice view, privacy, that still had some good phone reception. Because sometimes you go to cottages and your cell phone doesn't even work because you're so isolated. And we wanted to Airbnb that, so that wouldn't have worked if we were in that type of area. And it's got like septic tank, which is fine. The water, we actually have a UV treatment system so that you can actually drink the water. So there's a few things that I liked about it. It's 5 minutes away from like the grocery store, the LCBO, all those things. So it's got some great waterfront property. Now it's a little bit weedy, but there's, things that you can do. Like it's not overly weedy. Like you can actually rake it out or get companies to clean it up so that you can still swim in it, which a lot of people do on the lake.
Yeah, and some people prefer that. Like my husband's a fisherman and he looks for the weedy lakes. So we try to find the ones with the weeds not right on the beach when we rent. But weeds out there, so the fish can hide there and actually be in there.
Yeah, absolutely. So like that, I mean, it's a great, like what we have for fishing for sure. But then we try to just cut some of the weeds to create a swimming area every year, which, it takes some time, but it's not that consuming. Like what you don't want is the ones where you like can't even swim because there's just too many of them, right?
Right, for sure. So I have a couple of corporations that I own investment properties in, and I was wondering what you feel are the implications of purchasing a cottage in your personal name versus in a corporation. Like you're renting it out, so it's kind of like a business, but yet, I want to retire to my cottage. It will become my primary residence. So do you have any, opinions about that?
So I'm not a mortgage broker or an accountant. I would talk to both of them and then give them your specific scenario and situation on that. Like ours is actually in a corporation. And it was just based on the lender that we were using at that point in time where it didn't make sense. So it didn't make a difference to use our personal name or corporation. So we went ahead and just incorporated it. But I would just say like it's not as clean cut as like maybe the US would be, where like it's like everyone's in an LLC or something like that. Just walk them through your scenario and what you want to do, and then just see what the pros and cons are. So I would say, if you put it into a corporation, you're going to Airbnb it. At some point, you're going to have it as a primary residence. You're probably not going to want to take it and like transfer it from the corp to your personal name just because you don't want to pay the tax on it. Again, I'm not an accountant, but I would just say, just talk to both of them and just see what the best option for you is.
Okay. And then, so when you're going there, for the weekend or whatever, do you write off the mileage because you're going to check on your rental property?
Yeah, you can do it within reason. Like if we're going to, we were going to replenish the stock or something like that, but we're still taking a few days, we will. We still wouldn't want to, cause too many red flags with it. But we will write some of the kilometers off because obviously you have to still check up on it here and there.
Right. And then furnishing it, I guess that's also, a business expense. So that'd be nice nice to retire to a furnished cottage and be less expensive.
Yeah, I think we paid, I think it was like altogether, it was like $14,000 for furniture to furnish a 4-bedroom cottage. And we bought it all from StrucTube, which is actually pretty reasonably priced. And then the rest of the stuff from Amazon, and we just had it all shipped. So it was, yeah, it's a lot of work, but you know what? I think part of it is I can command a higher price per night. I mean, we're asking for $500 a night in the summer. You know, everything is new. It is a 4-bedroom. It is a 4-season. It's obviously not as much money in the winter, but it definitely carries itself. And I think people like the fact that it's modern, right? So like things that have a theme and a color pattern and all that stuff.
Right. So do you know if some towns have rules against rentals or short-term rentals? Like, I guess your real estate agent in the area would be familiar with that.
Yeah, definitely just do your research on that. I think for the Kawarthas, I mean, I can't paint every town and city with the same brush, but you know, it's fine for the most part. I mean, I think as long as you're not on leased land and you own your property and there hasn't been a whole lot of back and forth complaints, it's just more the complaints from the other neighbors. So we called the town prior just to see, you know, what their thoughts were, and they're fine with it.
Okay. Yeah, because a friend of mine's on Dalrymple, and I guess there's some problems there now, but she said because they already have the cottage as a rental, like they're kind of grandfathered in. So, so that's good.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, you know, you also have to figure out, like, if you're right next to your neighbors and your neighbors can see, and then there's all of these people and they're making tons of noise, like you might get more complaints, right? So I think our neighbors, there's like some trees and forest in between. So really it's pretty private. And I think that was the other important part, to rent a private cottage. People actually really enjoy that. They're not really looking into the other person's window, because we had looked at some cottages, like literally you could see the other person, you know, the dock was like 3 or 4 meters from the others, and it was just too crammed. I don't care how cheap that cottage would be. It just didn't make sense. And, you know, that's, I think, where you get more of the issues versus renting it where, you know, one side of our place is a 3-season cottage, and they're barely ever there. The other side, you know, we've became awesome friends with them, and every time we're up, they come over for dinner, and you know, they keep an eye on the place for us. So they're pretty cool. So, you know, really ultimately, as long as you're not getting complaints from the neighbors, you should hopefully be okay.
Yeah. And I guess that's a kind of a fine line in terms of number of bedrooms, because you can get more, you know, nightly or weekly with more bedrooms, but at the same time, it could cause more problems if you've got, you know, like 6 bedrooms or something. It can become like a party house that can generate complaints.
Yeah, well, that, and it's more wear and tear. And also, like, can your septic and your water and all of your utilities and stuff handle all those extra people? And do you want that many people? Because for the price difference, it might not be worth it. Like, so for us, like, we don't really actually want any more than like 9 people max. And it's, you know, and it's more because the more people you have, the more wear and tear you have. So you just got to figure out the pros and cons. If you're going to be, you know, using it for yourself too, there's always going to be little things, right? That's the thing to keep in mind. You go up and you're like, oh, you know, this is now used or scratched or broken, or, you know, it could be little things, and it's not, but they just add up. So you have to, it happens. I know, like, my boyfriend Matt gets frustrated sometimes. He's like, all the dishes are moved all around. I'm like, listen, you just made $3,500 this week.
Worth it to move a couple of dishes back.
Yeah, exactly. Like your wine glasses, like we like wine, and so we want to get, like, you know, the glass wine glasses, but like we're replacing them every single year. They just, even sometimes I break them.
Yeah. So do you use Airbnb to rent out your cottage, or do you use one of those other ones like Ontario Cottage Rentals or Cottages in Canada?
Yeah, so I use Airbnb and another company called Kawartha Cottage Rentals. I would say the majority of my, maybe 80% of my clients come from Airbnb, and then the rest come from the other company, which the other company will post on like VRBO and everything else. So essentially I'm in pretty much every site. They just take a higher percentage. I think they take like 15 or 20%.
Airbnb does, or
No, the other company. Airbnb is like, I don't know, like what is it, 4 or 7%, or I don't know, something super cheap in comparison anyways.
Do you put it on Facebook Marketplace? I've heard a lot of people have success with that for regular rentals.
I don't. So like I think part of it is just like, I just don't really use Facebook in general. But when it comes to Airbnb, like we actually turn down a lot of people. Like I want to make sure that they have their own positive reviews from other places. And like if someone's never stayed anywhere before, I actually I won't take the chance. And I think I'd rather miss out on $3,000 or $4,000 or whatever it is, and, you know, make sure that I know who is renting my place and that they've got other place, you know, the more that they have positive reviews, I think the better they'll try to keep the place tidy and nice and take care of it so that they keep their reviews up. So, you know, like in the past, you know, every month, I think I probably reject 1 week because somebody just doesn't have, you know, the criteria.
But is it usually rented every week?
In the summer, what we do is we rent it for a week every long weekend. So yes, I'm putting, you know, a lot of money, which I'm not getting because the long weekends are probably the most lucrative of the weekends. But we take a week every long weekend, and it is what it is because we still want to use it for us. And then we put the rest up to be rented. And then in the summer, it pretty much gets rented, other than the weeks that we use ourselves.
That's good. So does Airbnb take care of the cleaning, or does the other company, or you arrange that privately?
Yeah, so they won't take care of that. The other company won't either. And if they do, they may coordinate it, but my company that I work for doesn't, or that I work with doesn't. There might be some out there that might. I hired a local cleaner who probably lives like 2 or 3 minutes away from my cottage, like right in town. She's $20 an hour. She goes and then she cleans, and then I just basically send her e-transfers. And then we have a locked up storage area where like when we go up, we'll like replenish it with like, you know, toilet paper and Kleenex and soaps and cleaning supplies. And then she just unlocks that and gets the stuff that she needs when she needs to clean.
So how did you find her? Was it like Kijiji or a referral?
It was a referral from somebody else that I probably had another referral from. So originally we had used another cleaner. She was good, but she was expensive. And then she charged for like all the kilometers for like driving back and forth on top of it. So every time we had her clean, it was like $200 or something, or $250, which was, you know, a quick way to just get started, but not sustainable. So I think over time, just by asking people around, like store owners in the area and things like that, like I became friends with some of the store owners in town. And I think that's how she came as a referral when I was just mentioning that I was looking for a cleaner. And and then now she's $20 an hour. So it costs, you know, maybe 80 or $100 every time she goes. She does all the laundry, puts the bed sheets back or not, depending on, you know, if they need bed sheets or not. Yeah, no, she's been pretty good. So she's probably been working for us now for about 1.5 years.
That's good to have somebody reliable.
Yeah, it definitely keeps it simple because, you know, for us to go and clean, it just doesn't make sense because it's 2 hours back and 2 hours here, and she's 5 minutes away. So
right. So one other thing I just thought of to ask is there anything you do to differentiate your cottage from others, like to make it more desirable? Like in the city, you know, you could rent out a parking spot, you could, you know, rent out storage, like something to, you know, charge a bit more of a premium.
Yeah, I mean, I think our cottage, the fact that it has Wi-Fi, it has air conditioning, it feels like a house on the lake. I think definitely helps. It's got some, you know, great lakefront frontage. It has privacy. It has, you know, new furniture. I think that helps quite a bit. And then over time, you're going to get your reviews, and they're going to be positive because you're going to make sure that everyone's happy, etc. And you're going to become a super host. And when you become a super host, I mean, some people just search super host. So just keep your ratings high. Make sure that the clients get a little bit above and beyond. So sometimes we'll do like a wine bottle with a little card that says, enjoy the cottage, you know, have a drink on us, something like that. Not necessary, but it can go a long way. And, I think just like it doesn't feel dated. We advertise, and what's advertised is accurate. And I think that goes with the reviews that you get as well.
Cool. Okay. So actually, how do you become a super host? Like, do you have to have a certain number of stays?
Yeah, a certain number of stays, and then a certain rating as well. And then Airbnb, as an example, they'll like look every 3 months, and then they'll just like renew your status essentially.
Right. And they suggest what you should charge. Is that right? I think I've heard that.
Yeah, but they always suggest lower. So I would say look at what's in your area and how many reviews they've had, and look at their calendars and see how many blocked off days they have, and then make your price based on that.
Okay.
Because when I look at what they're suggesting, it's like sometimes it's so low that I'm like, I would rather just not rent it at that price and not have the wear and tear,
Yeah.
and then just rent it more in the summer where I can get the majority of my money to carry the cottage for the rest of the year.
Right. So does renting it for the time in the summer carry the cottage for the whole year, even though you're using it like for, the long weekend weeks?
Yeah, like I think roughly, I mean, there's a few friends that we rented it to separately, but like from Airbnb, we made 30 grand.
Nice.
Our cottage probably carrying costs about 25,000, just with everything, right? Like utilities and internet and stuff like that. And then the other, amount that we made on top of that. So I think for us, it's like, it's not going to be the same cash flow as you might get with a multifamily property, but like we've got a cottage that we can enjoy. So the fact that it pays for itself, and I've used a property that I refinanced to use as the down payment money, which didn't even come from us. I think that's pretty cool. And then we bought our cottage for $485, put in, I think 50 grand of renos, and it's worth about 640 in today's market. So I think overall, I mean, it was a great purchase. Like, yeah, we're not gonna, make $1,000 a month cash flow every single month. Like, especially in the winter, it's not as lucrative. But we'll have, like, because we're close to a boarding school, like there's actually parents that come from like around the world that will stay during the winter. Like we've got one person, she comes like probably every couple months, and she stays for about 10 days. And then in the winter, it'll probably be $150 a night. And we rented it to some divers that had from Montreal last year. They came for like, a couple months, and they stayed at our place for like December and January. Usually in March break, we'll get something. But your money really comes from like, May 2-4 essentially to actually goes up till like October, like Thanksgiving, and then it quiets down.
Right. So if somebody wanted to rent it for like a month, would you give them a discount then?
Not in the summer, because in the summer I'll rent it anyways.
Just in the winter, maybe?
I might consider it. Yeah. And again, I have to see if I want to be going up there myself, because if I want to be going there myself and they want to be there for a whole month, I might just turn them down, because I'd rather have the convenience of me using it and still carrying itself than, not be able to see it for a month if I've got plans to go up that month already. So it just depends on what you want.
Out of curiosity, what does it cost you to go from Oakville to Lakefield on the 407?
$50-$60. I think it's pretty expensive, but it's worth it if it saves me time.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, I think that's all the questions that I have. So are you ready to do the lightning round?
Sure, let's do the lightning round. Okay, cool. This is the first time I'm answering the lightning round questions.
Okay. Sarah, what is your favorite real estate investing book ever?
My favorite real estate investing book ever, I think probably Gary Keller, A Millionaire Real Estate Investor. I think it was very motivating. And I also, it's hard to pick one. I also really like Don Campbell's books for Canada, just because there's specific Canadian content that you won't get elsewhere. And so that's how I got started, is I really, got into Bigger Pockets, and then it was Gary Keller's books, and then the Bigger Pockets books that they have released. And then Don Campbell had like Canadian specific content. I'm like, oh, this is even more applicable. So
yeah, one thing leads to another, doesn't it?
it does. So I guess all of those. Did I fail my question?
Okay, what is your favorite podcast?
My favorite podcast, I would have to say, is the Smart Passive Income podcast from Pat Flynn. And it's not really real estate specific, but it gives you so much great insight for like just even being an entrepreneur and creating passive income.
I'll have to check that one out. Okay, so when you're not at the cottage and you're not doing your real estate investing stuff, what is your favorite pastime?
I love just hanging out with my friends and having people over and having dinners and like creating these like 5-course menus with like wine pairing and then just having my chef cook them.
I was going to say, you don't cook them, do you?
No, but sometimes we'll do like, we each bring a meal with a wine and then we pair that. So like, I like to do all of that stuff. Like I love just being outside in the summer, not in the winter.
Yeah.
You know, walking, and I like going to the gym and just like food, like trying different restaurants when we don't have any more food because our chef is coming soon. So, but yeah, I like going to the spa, getting massages, relaxing when I can. So
Sounds like a pretty good life.
it's not horrible. It's not horrible.
Okay, if you lost all of your money and assets tomorrow, how would you start again?
I think if I lost all of my money and my assets tomorrow, I still would have my experience and my network. So I would start again. I would just have the ability to really reach out to the people that I know now, which I didn't have before. And I have so much more knowledge. So I'd probably still do some BRRRRs and I'd probably do some JVs. And then, you know, get myself back on my feet. But I actually wouldn't be that worried. I really wouldn't. Because, you know, if I lost all of my money, and my assets, I would just need to figure out what the hell happened. And
Don't do it again.
and not do it again. And then JV, because I think ultimately, you know, having built a network is going, and they say your network is your net worth. I would reach out to them and figure out how I can help them, and vice versa.
Okay. And if someone has $50,000 and they want to get started in real estate, how would you suggest they get started?
So $50,000, I would say use a little bit to hire somebody to help you guide you, whether it's a coach or a mentor or take a class. And then use the rest to go out and take action. And if you only have $40,000 left, well, maybe that's not enough to buy a property, but see if there's somebody else that can hold the mortgage, put the rest of the down payment, do some kind of joint venture, and then start that way. Or go into a really cheap market and find a really cheap property, as long as it meets some fundamentals, and go there and start that way. Or you can start loaning it out at a percentage, right? You know, 10, 12, 15% until you accumulate enough. Loan it out to an investor that might need that 40 or 50 grand as a promissory note or whatnot. And, you know, just loan it out until you get enough to really go ahead and put that into an actual investment. So there's lots of options, and, you know, just be creative with it.
So do you have any final pieces of advice for your listeners?
I think what I would say is, you know, I'm here with what I have because I took action, even though in the beginning I really didn't know what I was doing. I really didn't. And then I just figured it out over time, and then just took some more action, figured out a little bit more, took more action. And then you develop your processes and your strategies over time. But I think I also always focused on the end goal of having that freedom and time, which, like, at this time of this year, I just had a conversation with Dahlia, my mortgage broker, and she's like, you could actually leave your job after you refinance this last property, which is really cool. And I've had the conversation with my boss saying, at this point, I'm not working for money. So like, I'm going to either leave, but if you really need me, I'll consider staying part-time. And he's like, I'll take it. I'll take the part-time. I have to just create a position if there's even such a thing, because no one's on part-time, but it's a really cool position to be in, because now I'm working because he is the best boss ever. So like, I definitely want to find my replacement and do it properly and, help as much as I can. But ultimately I did this for freedom of time and not having to, work for 30 years. And it took me 7. And I can say at this point in time, I have the ability to choose now what I want to do moving forward. So that's really cool.
Yep. 7's pretty good. Better than 30.
Awesome. Well, on that note, thank you so much, Michelle. It was really awesome having the tables reversed, you asking me questions. But before we go, can you tell us a little bit about you?
So I'm 45 years old. I'm happily married to my high school sweetheart. I have 2 teenage boys. I've been working for the same import-export company since 1998 when I graduated from U of T. But now, like I bought my first investment property in 2012. So, I'm kind of thinking about life after retirement as well. I also have a great boss. So he's let me work now 4 days a week. So I plan to just kind of, fade kind of like till fewer and fewer days and, hopefully be able to spend time at the cottage. And so, yeah.
Amazing. So, and you said that at the beginning you have 8 properties?
Yep. So I started with the rent to own in Hamilton in 2012. I'm a member of Rockstar Real Estate, so it's an investment club. So they, helped me, with the first few. And so then after the rent to own, I decided that I didn't want to sell it. I wanted to keep the properties that I buy. So then I bought a couple of duplexes in Hamilton. Then I bought a duplex in St. Catharines that I converted to a triplex that went way over budget, but is like such an amazing property that, you can really see how it's hard to go wrong in real estate, no matter what you spend or overspend. Then I got pushed further out because of the increasing prices. So we ended up with a 4-plex in Welland. And then recently we bought 2 properties in Timmins with a joint venture partner. Who has a bunch of doors up there. They were $22,000 for a triplex and $50,000 for a triplex. So yeah, if you did have $50,000 and wanted to get started, you could go to Timmins if you wanted to.
Very cool. I should look into Timmins. What are some of the fundamentals that you liked about Timmins?
Well, the price of the rent to price ratio is crazy. Like these tenants, for what they're paying in rent, like they could be buying the place. Like it's crazy. The prices of the rents do fluctuate with the price of gold because it is a gold town. But still, like even at their lowest, like the cash flow's like amazing. And to have someone up there, I think she has like 30 doors up there. So, I mean, I would never, go up there and buy it on my own. Like the tenant profile isn't as great as you would get here. But like I said, I just bought for the cash flow and the prices were so cheap. Like I bought them on my line of credit. So I don't know. I like to try different things, buy different. I have a student rental in Hamilton as well. So just, I don't know. I know they say you should stick to one strategy and, become an expert at it, but I kind of just, like I like to try different things and, just keep life interesting. So the next purchase will hopefully be a cottage.
Very cool. So just to go back on the Timmins one, because it's really intriguing. So like, what's the rent on that triplex as an example for that 50,000? Like you bought it for 50,000. What's the rent?
I think it's like $3,000 a month.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
I know.
So is this common, or was it like a triplex that needed a lot of revitalization?
They did need a lot of work. They were bank repos. So
Okay.
my joint venture partner I met at Rockstar a few years ago, and she knew of this investor who was defaulting on all his properties. She tried to help him out like by buying them, but he was just like kind of too far gone with what he owed the bank. So she just waited in the sidelines until the bank, you know, repossessed them. And then, you know, the prices kept going down and down. And then, you know, 2 Novembers ago, I guess it was, my husband and I decided to drive up there, like just do a road trip. And she showed us around, and, you know, they were in really bad shape, but she has a property investment or property management company up there. And she basically, you know, BRRRR'd them. So we're putting mortgages on them now. So I think we have 200,000 all in for both of them. And we just got a mortgage for 120 on one of them. And we're hoping to get a mortgage for like 90 on the other. So hopefully we'll be able to pull all our money out. So
that is very cool. So you are the mortgage holder and the person that put the money initially, right?
yes.
Okay, got it. Cool. That's awesome. Well, thanks for sharing that. And Michelle, if you need any help with your cottage search as you're looking, happy to help. Just reach out anytime. Thank you so much.
All right. Thanks, Sarah.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks so much for listening to Where Should I Invest with your host, Sarah Larbi. Make sure to listen in next time. We'll catch you on the next episode of Where Should I Invest?